Hey all, excited to get to bring this word to you this week. I hope that you are doing well, that God's been doing some great things in your life through going through Romans 8, and that you've been receiving some encouragement from Him. I hope you're using these kind of as a devotional, if you will, that maybe you're even spending your own time in the scriptures and seeing what God's saying to you, or spending time in your journal after we're done and just asking the Lord, all right, what do you want to say to me through this, and receiving from Him. Because that's the real value in these things. And so hopefully they've been encouraging and good for you. We're going to jump back into Romans chapter 8, and we're going to pick it up in verse 14. We're going to read 14 through 17. Some of you will recognize these verses. Pastor Kim taught out of them in one of our recent group series that did a great job. And I'm going to look at a slightly different angle of this teaching that from what she talked about. So here we go. Verse 14. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by Him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in His sufferings, in order that we may also share in His glory. I wish I could unpack each one of these verses and word by word individually for you. There's just so much great stuff in here. So I'd encourage you, spend some time in these verses and looking at all the different things. But I wanted to look at verse 17 a little bit. He says, if we're children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. And that's what Pastor Kim talked about. What does that look like? But he says, then that means something, that we share in His sufferings in order that we may also share in His glory. He says what this means, what having this battle going on that we've been talking about between the life of the flesh and the life of the Spirit, and trying to go after the life of the Spirit and what God has for you, is that you're going to have some moments, some seasons, some intense days of suffering. Because when you go after what the Lord has for you, that really pisses off the enemy. And he comes after you in full force to get you to stop, to get you to slow down. And so the reality is that following after God will make life hard at some points. Now, it's worth it, and it's so worth it. And God's there with us, but it will make some situations and moments in life hard and difficult. But I love what he says all throughout this section, is that we're His children, is that essentially we don't have to face these things alone. As most of you know, being parents, that you don't leave your kids to figure out every issue of life by themselves. No, you walk with them. They fall down, they hurt themselves, they get in trouble at school or get picked on at school. You walk with them, you talk through with them what's going on, and you help them figure out the next steps. And in the same way, if we're His children, if you're His son, you're His daughter, God does that with you. But not only because He's forced to. I love what it says in verse 15, that the Spirit doesn't make us slaves, rather it brought about our adoption to sonship, our adoption to daughtership. You know what it means to be adopted? It means you were chosen. It means that God chose to walk with you through the worst days of your life. That God, knowing and seeing all, outside of time, so able to look down at every moment of your life that has happened or will happen, knows every hard moment you're going to walk through, everything the enemy's going to send at you, and He says, yeah, I choose them. I'm going to walk with you through this. So if you're in the middle of some suffering today, this week, this past season, know that you're His son, you're His daughter, chosen from the beginning of time to be walked through those things with the Lord. And I hope that you'll receive that. I hope that you'll see that He chooses to do this, that our problems are never a burden to Him, but that He loves to walk with us. So I'd encourage you today and this week to stand in your inheritance. Stand in that namesake, that I am the Lord's son. I am the Lord's daughters. And even when the demons of hell come after me to try to stop what God's doing in my life, I can cry out, Abba, Father, Daddy, and He'll come to my defense. He'll come and be there with you. Doesn't mean He'll take away the sufferings. It doesn't mean that everything will all of a sudden get better, but you won't be alone through those things. He's a good and gracious Father that walks with us in the best of times and in the worst of times. Hope you can celebrate that and stand in that today, knowing that no matter what you're facing, you're His son, you're His daughter, chosen. He chose you, and He will stand with you, and even at times hold you when you can't stand up yourself. Have a great week.